Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Skye and today I'm doing a 3 looks 1 palette plus review with the Lunar Beauty Moon Spell palette. Now if you aren't interested in hearing my review on this product, skip to this timestamp right here. That will take you straight to look 1 and yeah, so if you don't want to hear my review, just skip to that timestamp right there. However, if you want to hear my review, then just keep on watching. So I purchased this palette back in October when I had a £10 off voucher. So the original price of this is £48. However, I paid $38. The packaging is absolutely divine. This is easily the prettiest packaging in my collection. It's actually textured right here, and this is kind of like a smooth kind of vinyl thing. It almost feels like a faux leather book, essentially. It's absolutely stunning. There's even divots on the side where pages would be. And here's the back right here. Now when you open up the palette, it has a metallic backing, which I'm not a big fan of because it's quite hard to capture on camera and in videos. However, for the most part, I don't think that's an issue if you're just a regular consumer, and it has a nice big mirror as well. This is a £15 palette, and as you can see, it's organized in purples, neutrals, and green and teals. I absolutely love the way that this palette is laid out. Now let's talk about the formulas. There are a few different formulas in this palette. We have your standard matte formula, we've got your high shine metallics, and we've got a couple of satins in here, as well as a couple of shadows that are a bit different. We'll talk about those in a second. First of all, let's start off with the matte formula. I absolutely love this matte formula. It's so easy to blend and really effortless. Like, it doesn't take a lot of blending to get it to blend well, if that makes any sense. They are slightly powdery. When I think of some super powdery shadows, I think of Davina's matte formula, and they are less powdery than Davina's matte formula, but they are still a little bit powdery, and you can get a little bit of fallout if you pick too much up on your brush. However, fallout is not a thing that I really care about, but I just thought that would be good to mention. I don't find that these fade or crease on me throughout the day. I always use the Milani eyeshadow primer. That is my personal favorite, and I use that with every single palette I use. I find that even this teal right here, which teals are quite hard to formulate, works really well, and it doesn't lose its pigment to it. It still remains a teal on your eyes. Also, sorry if you can hear my cat Molly scratching herself. The only matte shadow in here that I would say is not the best is this shade right here called Sabrina, because it is that dark royal purple. I find that you have to be quite careful working with this shadow. You have to kind of pack it on and not blend it as much, because if you blend it too much, it will kind of not turn muddy, but kind of, I guess. That's the only way I can describe it. I did use this in my second look, and you'll kind of see how it performs in that regard. So it's a bit harder to work with, but you can make it work. You just have to be a bit more careful with it. But overall, the matte formula in here is absolutely top notch. I highly recommend it. Now let's talk about the metallics in this palette. The metallics in this palette are Prue, Phoebe, Mary, Samantha, and Hermione. Now, I find that there's two different metallic formulas in here. We have the high shine metallics, and then we have the not so high shine metallics. I find that Prue and Samantha are very creamy to the touch. Like, when you touch them, they feel kind of silky. In a way, they're very pigmented. And as you can see, Samantha right there is high shine. I barely touched into it. And they work really well on their own or with a glitter primer. I personally use a glitter primer with every single metallic because I find that they are more intense on top of a glitter primer and they last better on my lids. But they do work without a glitter primer just fine. Now, Phoebe, Mary, and Hermione, they are metallics, but they are slightly drier feeling in the pan, like they're a little bit gritty feeling. And I find with Phoebe and Mary, you do need a glitter primer with these, at least in my experience, or you need to spray your brush. They don't really translate well from a brush to the lid without any sort of base. Now, the only shade that I actually can strongly say that I hate in this palette is this shade right here called Hermione. Hermione is so gritty, gets hard pan incredibly fast, and even when I try to remove the hard pan with a stiffer brush or with tape, it just hard pans immediately again. And it's not pigmented at all. Like, I absolutely hate this shade, and thankfully it's like a bronze color, which I never use. I never use coppery bronzes on my lid, so at least the worst shade in the palette for me is a shade that I'd never use anyways. And finally, we have Piper and Fiona. These two are actually satin eyeshadows. Now, I don't like satin eyeshadows that much, and actually Piper is the only eyeshadow in this palette, along with Hermione, that I didn't use in this 3 looks 1 palette video. However, I am wearing Fiona on the outer portion of my lid today with this look, And they are nice, they're pigmented, they're creamy, they are easy to work with, they're just not high shine and they are just satins. Which if you like satin eyeshadows, these are a really good formula. But again, it's not that big of a deal. I can just layer an eyeshadow topper on top of them in order to make them work for my preference. But that is purely a preference thing, they work just fine. So I feel like I've blabbered on a lot about this palette in this review. I wanted to be very thorough. Now, for me personally, is it worth £48? Now that's expensive for an eyeshadow palette, in my opinion at least. The maximum I would spend for an eyeshadow palette is £50, like that is the absolute max. So this is kind of pushing it in a way. However, I absolutely love this formula. It's really fantastic to work with. Even though there are a couple of dud shades in the palette and there are some satins in here, thankfully, the majority of the palette I will get good use out of. I would say this palette is about a 7.5/8 out of 10. Purely because it's not a 10 out of 10 because of the satins and some of the metallics in here are a little bit gritty and you have to work a bit more. Same with that dark purple Sabrina. But overall, it's a solid palette and it's absolutely fantastic. I will definitely get a lot of use out of this, and if you love grungy eyeshadow with a mix of brights, then you'll definitely love this one. But now let's move on to the 3 looks that I created with it. This look that I'm wearing right here is look number 3. So I hope you continue watching and you enjoy seeing my looks with them. First, I'm taking the shade Winifred on a big blending brush and I'm putting that in my crease. I'm now taking the shade Kiki and I'm going to be putting that in my outer V just to deepen things up. For my lower lash line, I'm taking the shade Nancy and I'm just gonna smoke it out. I'm taking my NYX glitter primer now and I'm just gonna put that all over my lid. And now I'm taking the shade Samantha and putting that on top of the glitter glue. And now I'm taking the shade Prue and putting that on my inner corners. For my waterline, I'm taking Colourpop's Downtown LA. For blush, I'm using Kaleidos Punch. For highlight, I'm using Kaleidos Moon Cruiser. Finally, for lips, I'm using the Melt Liquid Lipstick in Chestnut. And that's the end of look number 1. First I'm taking Sarah and I'm putting that in my crease. I'm now taking the shade Page and I'm going to be putting that in my crease again. I'm now taking Sabrina and I'm going to be putting that in the inner portion and the outer portion of my lid. We're doing a halo eye today. I'm taking Page again and I'm going to be putting that on my lower lash line, just mimicking what we did on the lid. Deepening up the lower lash line with Sabrina. I'm taking the shade Phoebe and putting that in the center of my lid and the center of my lower lash line. For my inner corners, I'm taking Prue yet again. And to add a bit more shine on the halo, I decided to take a bit of Prue on my finger and just tap it over the center, and it brought out just the most magical, like warm-toned purple shine. For my waterline, I'm using Colourpop's Crybaby and Piggy Bank just to mimic the halo yet again. I like uniformity, okay? For blush, I'm using Odin's Eye Little Jasmine. Using Kaleidos Star Surfer for highlighter. And for lips, I'm using Odin's Eye Perfect Plum. And that's the end of look number 2. First, I'm taking the shade Bonnie and I'm putting that in my crease. Now I'm taking Marnie, the dark green, and I'm putting that in my outer V. Taking some glitter glue and I'm putting that on my lid. For my lid shade, I'm using Mary. To add a little extra, I'm using the shade Fiona and putting that on the outer portion of my lid. And I'm layering a little bit of Mary on top just to make it a bit more shiny. And for my inner corners, yet again, I'm using the shade Prue. It's just such a good inner corner shade. For my waterline, I'm using a mixture of Colourpop's Fastlane, which is like a dark forest green, and then on the inner portion of my waterline, I'm going to be layering the Ella Girl liner in Gotcha. For blush, I'm using Kaleidos Punch. For highlighter, I'm using Kaleidos Laser Glazer. For lips, I'm using the Lethal Lipstick in Quest. And that's the end of look number 3. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Full details of this makeup look that I'm wearing right here should already be on Instagram, which is beautyybyskye right here. Do follow me on there if you want to see more makeup content from me. You can also follow me on my other social media. I actually run a makeup Discord, and that will be linked down below if you'd like to join. We just talk about all things makeup and some random things as well. It's a really great community on there, so if you'd like to join, there's a link to join in my description down below if you have a Discord account link. And my Twitter are all linked down below, along with my Ko-fi page if you'd like to tip me a coffee. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you here. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.